All right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Lakewood City Council, Lakewood, Colorado study session at 7:27 p.m. on December 19th, 2022. We have a packed night of a lot of great presentations and get to hear from our Lakewood Advisory Commission. So certainly want to thank everyone who's joining us this evening to be part of local government. If you want to join via telephone, that number is going to be 720-707-2699 with a webinar ID of 836-2082-8098. That same webinar ID is what you will use for Zoom, 836-2082-8098, forgive me, 836-2082-8098, double pound. With that, will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Franks.
Here.
Jansen.
Here.
Maya Guerrero.
Here.
Vincent. Strom.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Counselor Strom.
Here.
Sharazai.
Here.
Springsteen. Stewart.
Here.
Over.
Here.
Mayor Paul, you have a quorum.
Great. All right. So we'll get this program started with item 3, presentation, distressed properties. Sounds like I'll be turning it over to our Director of Planning, Mr. Parker. And we'll note that there's a comment on Lakewood Speaks, and then we received a extensive kind of summary from Tom Quinn of Alameda Connects.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present proposals for Council's consideration on vacant and blighted properties. Start by sharing my screen and run through the presentation that was on Lakewood Speaks. So this is a continuation of a discussion that began in July of this year. At that time, Council was presented with 7 research possibilities for regulating distressed properties, both vacant and blighted. Council came to consensus to move forward with 4 of those proposals, including tracking vacant and blighted properties, fines for non-compliance, creating a land bank, and short-term loans. In the memo, and for the purposes of tonight's presentations, numbers 1 and 2 are combined into a single proposal. And furthermore, I want to be clear that these are not mutually exclusive proposals. They're designed to work collaboratively together. Council can certainly go forward with all of them, or 1 or 2 of them, or none of them, but they don't. These are not meant to be just options that you must choose among. So starting with the tracking and flighting program. The idea is to create 2 lists, a vacant property list and a blighted building list, and create criteria for each list so that city code enforcement, city staff could easily determine whether a project is vacant and or blighted. For items on the blighted property list, a property owner would have up to 60 days to remedy that blighted situation. If the blight is not remedied within 60 days, they would be fined 40 mils per month until the blight is remedied. For properties on the vacant property list, they would have also 60 days to remedy that vacancy, to find a tenant or user of that property, at which time a 20 mil fine would be assessed per month on that property until the vacancy is remedied. For vacancies, there would be up to a 2-year abatement of that fine for properties that are actively for sale or actively under development, going through the development process. The second proposal in front of you tonight is to create a city land bank. The creation of a new city land bank would allow the purchase of property, the purchase and disposal of property by a committee responsible for the land bank. The proposal in front of you has criteria for such purchase and disposal, criteria including a willing seller, that the city gets market price for any property that it sells, and that any development done on property sold by the land bank further city goals. The idea of this land bank is to promote redevelopment, remove blighted properties from Lakewood. But certainly if City Council has other goals for this land bank, wants to move forward with the land bank and has additional goals such as the promotion of affordable housing or other things, we can certainly incorporate those goals, and it would be good to hear those tonight so we can put them in any resolution moving or any ordinance moving forward. The final proposal tonight then is a revolving loan fund for the cleanup of properties. So this is particularly relevant when there is a for sale property with a blighted building on it, when there's homelessness involved. This would allow a property owner not to try and sell their property as is, but to borrow money on a short-term basis to have the property cleaned up, have the building demolished. This could also be used for property under development, rather than waiting a year and a half, 2 years while going through the development review process and allowing further blight, further vagrancy on the property. This money would be available for cleanup of those properties while properties are being reviewed for future development. These are intended to be short-term loans, 0 to low interest, and these loans would be automatic, would be repaid upon sale or occupancy of the property. Next steps, if Council should choose to move forward with one or all of these proposals, staff will draft municipal code regulations to implement them. This will include additional and even more thorough internal and legal review of the proposals as we go forward, and then ultimately a City Council public hearing on any new proposed ordinance. I am happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, and certainly think there will be, as this is of important interest to many in our community. And again, I would reiterate, I think the one comment on Speaks had to do with land banking and support of that, and potentially utilizing a third party like an elevation or folks that are generally focused on housing is my understanding. And then Alameda Connects sent an extensive list, and I don't know, I think if we were to incorporate some of those, if council wanted to, maybe those would be better on an amended basis if this were to move forward tonight than trying to go at that without all of council being able to have an opportunity. So I'll turn it over to the body, and I want to start with Miss Mayotte Guerrero.
Hi, thanks so much for this, leading us in this discussion, Mr. Parker. I think, this is a long time coming, and it's really great to be here at the end of the year with all right, here's some ways to move forward. For me, I end up with a couple of, I guess I haven't quite formulated them into questions, but there's questions in there if you can help to devise them for me. I think first of all, on the first of just thinking about vacant versus blighted properties, I'd like us to be extremely cautious about blighted and not vacant. I think that the idea that property owners, residents, businesses that are struggling, where things are going potentially very poorly, where things are blighted, but where the properties are being actively used, to me is not the main point of this. And I recognize that there is some battle, and I think that there's lots here on the City Council who are going to feel really differently than me about that. But I feel extremely strongly that we don't want to be in the business of asking, say, landlords of an icky looking property to evict people, right? I want us to be incredibly cautious. And I don't think that that's what you were intending in the thing. That feels like such a slippery slope to me. And so really, to me, thinking about that vacancy, the abandonment, right? The 2-year stretch of it's now not been in use, it's been abandoned, etc. For example, maybe there's a threshold that we could loosely based on a property that was over on Sheridan that we could look at as an example of where that threshold might be. But to me, that's a really, really important. So that is something that I'll end up, I think, feeling really sticky about. And then, yeah, and I think within that same realm, I want us to be really careful about not placing too many aesthetic issues. I recognize that there's some levels of danger, et cetera, and I'm game for those as components of this. But I think, again, something that I think makes Lakewood so wonderful compared to other American suburban cities is actually that we don't have really like rigorous and homogenous feelings and aesthetic. And I do think that having some level of aesthetic code is totally appropriate, recognizing that we're a place where people of lots of like really different classes and abilities and backgrounds are able to exist and, try to get their feet on the ladder is very important to me. And then I think on the land bank side, I just wanted to flag that I'm very interested in affordable housing and local business, like as key components, and even thinking about multi-use as important components. But then in addition to that, parks and open space and locations for more like social services support. So those are all things that came to my mind on that.
Thank you. I have Miss Vincent and Miss Jansen.
Yeah, as we move forward, I would look to tighten some of those things perhaps. And I think that's almost what Alameda Gateway was getting at some of them. So from people who say they're active, 10th and Sheridan, or a place on Sheridan and 10th is a great example of that. They said for 7 years, I think, that they were selling it or were interested in it. And so how do we prevent pushing that envelope? I've even got a house that's in total that they say they have been renovating and have had permits for over 2 years as a matter of fact, over in the country club area. So how do we make sure? Because I want to support what Councilor Mayotte Guerrero said. We don't want to have things where, we don't like the way that it looks, but so that we can tighten it so that people can't play games with that. Does that make sense? Are you with me on that? Because if we leave too long of a gap, they'll fill it. We have some people like that. So that's what I would look for. And I do appreciate this. And how long may it take till we get it implemented?
Is that a question? How long may it take?
Yeah.
Well, we could, if council gives us the go ahead to draft an ordinance, we can have something back to you in a couple months by early spring, then have it implemented shortly thereafter.
People would be happy.
Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up to that, Mr. Parker, to build off of that. This is pretty extensive as far as what we're looking to do and is impactful to people's property and the community. So if we did move forward tonight, would there be an opportunity maybe just to have a follow-up study session and then it'd be up to council if they wanted that, with a more developed ordinance that we'd really have a better understanding, and that way the community could weigh in and potentially we could look at amendments so we're not having something baked into and then second reading trying to make a bunch of changes.
Absolutely. We can absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have Ms. Jansen, Franks, Mr. Abel, Ms. Strom.
Thank you. So I'm a very strong property rights owner, proponent, and I probably would not kind of go with any of this. And also in our Colorado Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, I don't know if that allows any short-term loans. And if you want to say if anybody knows anything about that, I'd have it up. I have it pulled up. So that's what I'm kind of worried about that.
And Ms. Jansen, I think we can get you, we've had that question in the past, whether it's our community grant program or other programs that are operated throughout the city. And I think there is certainly a legal opinion that we can provide if you need that.
Yeah, Section 1 and Section 2, Article 11 states that we can't do that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Franks?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I did want to build off of a couple things that Councilor Mayotte Guerrero was talking about. I certainly do think that there's a potential for a bit of an overreach, and we know that folks are struggling. COVID is not too far in the rearview mirror, and it certainly appears that we could have some more issues. But I do want to make sure that we kind of sort of look at things that would be more safety concern oriented, where we may have what I would call maybe absentee owners who are out of state and maybe don't have maybe the same sense of, they don't see the property. So what they don't see, they may not be aware of. I also want to see if there would be an opportunity to connect some of these folks to resources that could, help when they might be financially struggling, but they might be able to bring those properties up so they can attract more business and be more successful. The other thing I'd be more interested in is maybe when we come back for a kind of a follow-up study session is more of a phased approach. What are the things we're trying to solve immediately? What are our biggest things that we need to solve? And sort of taking that phased approach and then sort of setting the stage for the community that phase one looks like X and here's what we're trying to solve for. And kind of getting the community to engage with us to help us sort of continue to move this forward. I mean, we all want our communities to be, nicer, crime-free, those types of things, but we can't really boil the ocean at one time. And there's going to be things that are really key that we address right away. And so I'd be more of a proponent of a phased approach where we can kind of see what's working, what's not, and then continue to increment that forward. Certainly not taking too long, but it feels to me like it may be something if we swing a little bit too far, we may have some unintended consequences. So those are just more comments, really no question in there, but just a request for that session to maybe at least consider those approaches. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Abel.
Thank you, Mayor. When we started this discussion, it centered mostly around commercial properties. One of my concerns is that if we include housing units, then we will be in danger of losing the existing affordable units. And gentrification would triumph. I would rather see us start with commercial buildings. Our biggest concern, I believe, when this came up a couple of years ago was the Sears building. That sort of thing blocks, being empty blocks a lot of progress in other ways. So I would be more interested in applying this to commercial properties and less to housing, because I'm just afraid we're going to lose a lot of affordable housing because folks consider it dingy.
Yeah, to follow up on that too. So Mr. Parker, I mean, don't we already have tools in place for residential? So I thought that maybe this was geared more towards the commercial aspect.
It's certainly at council's discretion. It can be limited to commercial. It can apply to both. We have limited enforcement potential for, large scale residential, multifamily. So I think one area that we could focus on, or could maybe as a second stage look at, is older multifamily buildings, especially vacant ones.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Mr. Abel, go ahead.
I had to unmute myself again. I'm not talking about just multifamily units. I'm talking about single family units. There are a smattering of triplexes, quadplexes, sixplexes, whatever they're called. And I'm concerned about the kind of homes that were along 14th, over toward Sheridan, where we had some properties that were declared blighted under the SGI, quote, SGI blight provision. So I just wouldn't be interested at all in single family residences, multifamily even perhaps, but still, West Metro or Metro West did a great job of preserving some older, affordable multifamily over near Indy Flats along with that project. And, that we should be encouraging that as much as possible. So it's my 2 cents worth.
All right, Ms. Strom.
Thank you. Put my hand down. No. I start off with this is great. And my understanding of this was that it was commercial. The conversation started out of concern for crime that goes on, homelessness that is found, some of these distressed properties, and really big part of it is the cost to the city. It's the cost to the taxpayers when there's one particular property that has multiple calls to service, especially multiple units, as there are some places within Lakewood that fall within that space. So I first of all, in general, to say, the email that we received from Mr. Quinn from Alameda Connects, I thought really brought in some good points, some maybe ways that little nuanced things that we could add to it to be a little more specific in some of these areas, like incorporating principles of crime prevention through environmental design. I thought was a really good suggestion there. Tracking all calls. I do, big part of this conversation that we had this summer was around the amount of calls that go on with these buildings, making sure that we're tracking that. I think that also too comes back to that gives us a little bit of an idea as to how much the individual property is actually causing that they're costing taxpayers of the city of Lakewood. But then the questions I had, the first one that when we were looking at, I think it was the vacant properties, was it mentioned specifically that it was on sale or it was for sale. We're in vacant properties, section CI, and notice shall be provided to owner 60 days. They have 60 days to occupy the building, sit for lease or sale, or submit development proposal. One thing I think that's important with this is market rate pricing. I would hate for someone to price it above market and then have that be a way for them to get out of doing things just because it's on sale or for sale. And then separately, the that I had around the revolving loans was, and back to talking about commercial property, if we're looking at a maximum loan term of 1 year, I think that may be a little short. Sometimes, commercial properties, it's not uncommon for a property to be for sale for longer than that period of time. So can it be longer than 1 year, or are there contingencies if this particular property is doing all the things it should be doing and it is still on the market a year later? Those are my comments. Thank you.
Right. And just to clarify, building off again, a few years ago in a previous council, we dealt with a nuisance house in Ward 5. And I thought at that time we passed an ordinance that really tightened up some of the things related to residential. So I'd be curious if those are enough to handle our residential to where we have the opportunity then to really focus this on the commercial. And really as a check-in, it sounds like council would like to see this move forward, mainly towards the commercial side with not quite as heavy-handed approach at first, or, something kind of on a smaller scale, and bring it back with an opportunity with more community feedback, as well as an ordinance that can be reviewed and then go forward to a first and second reading based upon potential amendments at that time. Does that sound, I certainly see you, Ms. Jensen. I know that you don't want to see that. Rest of council, where are you at on that? Does that sound like a way to move forward from here? Okay, Mr. Parker, is that enough? I know it's not a ton, but I mean, this is pretty high level at this point.
I think that gives us enough to go on to write an ordinance and bring it back to you at a study session.
And I know we're probably starting to pack up for next year already, and we haven't even had our planning retreat. So but I don't think we want to also see this languish for months. I know that, for instance, we have some properties right on Colfax that are really, really challenging right now.
Can I ask, staff didn't have any concerns with making the changes that we heard from Alameda Connects from Mr. Quinn. Is council okay with us adding those changes in as well? Or do you want to wait and look at them some more and talk about it at the study session?
Why don't we just, if we can, make sure they're part of that, and then we can see if, hey, we want to leave that in or not. And that also gives the community an opportunity.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. All right. Well,
much.
thank you very much. Appreciate it. I also need to open a public input piece on this. So does anybody wish to speak, star 9 to request to speak on this topic that you just heard? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on. I'll ask the clerk to read item 4.
Item 4, presentation update on House Bill 21-1162, single-use plastic production from Lakewood Advisory Commission.
All right. And again, I would like to welcome our advisory commission members. We are thrilled to have you. It's been a very long time, I think, since we've had this opportunity, and a lot of interest from this council to hear from you and to support you in your mission. And we'll go ahead and turn it over right now. Mr. Freeman, looks like you're tuned in, and we'll begin the conversation. Oh,
Thank you.
Mr. Rob. Oh, Mr. Rob, did you want to do an introduction? I'm sorry.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. Roger is a member of the LAC Commission and Sustainability Subcommittee, and he, along with the other members of the Sustainability Committee, prepared the 11-page report following Council's assignment to study House Bill 21-1162. So, Roger, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and pull up that presentation.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mayor Paul and Honorable Council. Yes, at this point, I would hope I'd need no introductions, as I think this is perhaps my 4th or 5th presentation on behalf of the LIC. And in particular, this one is near and dear to my heart. I've worked for many decades, as many of us have, on the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And it's important, I think, to propose meaningful and advanced initiatives on the reduce side. Those of us who have been working on this for so long recognize that that's really the first and foremost task that might be necessary here. I've been able to work through LAC procedures with Nicole Steyer, who will present on behalf of staff. So we have a coordinated proposal today. Hopefully there won't be too much overlap, but some of it's intentional. This is, without putting on my law professor hat, an attempt to hopefully give you some background on this somewhat complex phase-in of a very important proposal or act that the state has passed. And we look forward to briefing you quickly and taking questions. The assignment that we were provided by the LAC, and I speak on behalf of the LAC, was to review what other communities are doing, understand the legislation and what it means, what it requires, and look at some options and ideas for how to implement it. So we'll go through those things quickly from the LAC standpoint. Again, we're a citizens group trying to broadly look at what is important as this legislation unfolds and what citizens might be particularly focused on. Next slide, please. This was passed, the act was passed in 2021. It was one of several statewide laws designed to address what we all know as Colorado's poor waste diversion rate. We don't do well. We haven't done well for many decades, for as long as I've worked on this. And so it's pretty important for us to recognize that there's a lot to be done in a state that's otherwise recognized as green. And so I think if we leave with nothing today, the most important point is this act really signals a whole sea change in how waste issues are to be addressed. The preemption bar, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that word, that bar that for many decades had asked that localities not take action that is more aggressive than the state, was lifted by this act. And therefore, this is a signal and an approach to all cities, all counties, to exercise their discretion and move forward with whatever makes sense for our community. But in that, with that said, this is a statewide act. It sets a basic set of phased-in steps that covers primarily paper and plastic bags, but much more. Next slide, please. Here's the basics. January 1st of this year, there will not be a ban on single-use paper or plastic bags, but at covered locations, there will be a minimum of 10 cents per bag charge at covered locations. I'll cover that term in a second, but think of covered locations as being covered immediately statewide by this interim 1-year charge. Another year, January 1st, 24, there will be a statewide ban at these same covered locations on all single-use plastic bags. Paper still can be provided subject to a fee, and to signal a broader coverage of certain materials, there will be a ban on polystyrene cups and containers at certain restaurants and schools. Finally, the act says as of July 2024, localities will have had the time to work through their programs. The preemption ban is fully lifted, and each locality, county, or city should move forward. Next slide, please. What are these covered locations? Basically, stores with fewer than 3 locations are exempt. So we're thinking here, we're looking at coverage for the bigger, broader chains that are known to us as grocery stores, convenience stores, and many other stores which have more than 3 locations. And so this is being geared up statewide by those same entities, of course. And one of our key takeaways here is this is not Lakewood specific alone. We need to ride and build on what we're doing elsewhere, and as citizens, make sure we're not reinventing the wheel. There's some other exceptions. I think Nicole will cover these as well, so I'm going to move quickly through this slide. I just want to emphasize that there is a glitch in the collection date language. Many of you know how sausage is made at the legislature. This is a perfect example. And there's really just a typo, is basically what it is. And as a result, technically, Lakewood is not mandated to start collecting the fees until the first quarter of 2024, which I'll let you take your breath because I know I speak quickly. Doesn't make any sense. But collectively, I think the localities have been looking at this and figuring out a way to use, the flexibility in the language to try to move forward more quickly. I know Nicole will be speaking about this. Lastly, at the bottom bullet, if you will, this is an anomaly in a sense. This is a statewide act. The state has said we need to move forward in this way, but there's no provision for state enforcement and there's no money. So it's a bit, enforcement is clearly left to localities only. It's right there in the statute. And so that'll be an issue that I'm sure will continue to be discussed and bandied about. Next slide, please. One of our key tasks, of course, is research, and we apologize we didn't get to this before you a bit sooner, but it has been evolving at many different localities, and we also had some transitions within the sustainability committee that we've had. So I've taken it on particularly recently, and we're ready to move forward. This isn't new. You've heard about it. You've read about it. We provided mainly the chart that is included in the full report, which was in your packet. This is a summary, of course. That chart went as best we could city by city so you can see what others are doing. It detailed that this is something that had unfolded in many communities before the state statute was passed. As you can imagine, that creates a little bit of a startup issue for many. Some are starting with a provision that already was in place. Fort Collins has an interesting history we detailed in the report. having passed this and now looking at and completing amendments to it. Many cities are facing the same startup issues as Lakewood. As a result, the Colorado Municipal League, CML, is leading the charge along with a group, EcoCycle, that many of you are familiar with, to help localities figure this out, coalesce, organize, and continue to monitor how it's going to start up in their municipality. Ultimately, the final program is up to us. Next slide, please. Okay, so certainly one option that we detail in the report is just the basics of what this minimum program requires. Certainly that's one option that is many localities are pursuing. It's already, complicated and cumbersome, and there's some issues in getting started up. Get the minimum in place, move on, and progress as time goes on. The other options that we talk about is extending to other locations and stores. It's going to be difficult at times to distinguish between when you're going to get charged for a plastic bag. We've seen this in other localities, when you're not allowed to have one at all, what stores are covered. Some stores just want to do this. Some are doing this. Would we ultimately extend to make it more uniform and less difficult to track? Certainly, as you know, there are bans on other materials that are being either passed, considered, or implemented. Europe is way ahead on some of these matters, depending on how you look at it. There's certainly leeway, and in some ways sort of an implication to localities that over time, the bans and the types of materials that are being restricted should be extended. Clearly, and the funding is directed towards this, the idea is to educate and stage in other processes and to go out to our community. And one option I'll talk about at the end of the presentation just a bit more is about the skip the stuff type program that we see in many other localities. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the stakeholders. They're listed and described in detail. A few points. We've worked closely as LAC procedures allow to dovetail what we are suggesting here with the Office of Economic Development. Clearly, there's more outreach required to community and business. There have been vocal oppositions to these types of bans. You can expect that there will be here. But on the other hand, there's overwhelming support from different entities as well, many listed here. And I just would flag that Lakewood Schools, the youth of our community, has come forth and actually was responsible in many ways for the inclusion of a ban of polystyrene materials at schools. So there's stakeholders from all standpoints, as usual in matters of this nature. Last slide, please. Some suggestions from all our work and ideas going forward. Clearly, and this is happening, the Colorado Municipal League and other resources are helping other localities calibrate their program, figure out how to implement it, figure out how to split the funds, which Nicole will talk about in more detail. And so that's clearly a key element. I think tracking the milestones, periodically checking in with council and setting timeframes for reporting back on how this is working is key. As I mentioned, there's a glitch in the language about what exactly fees should be suggested. After looking at the various options, we suggest as a citizens committee that fees be collected starting now. It only makes sense. The funding is necessary. Clearly, there will need to be additional staffing to help support this, at least for the first year or two. So I think the expectation is that this will roll out soon, or January 1st, of course, but that the fees and the building of funding will take place this year, even though there's some question about exactly what the language requires. Stakeholder outreach is critical. Hopefully, this is the first step towards that, and obviously we'll have a robust discussion. I'll close with a picture of my kids. It's only appropriate to say that I think that the most important thing that has come out of the recent campaigns is the cut the cutlery, skip the stuff campaigns. And all they basically do, and Denver has one of these and many other localities do, is not presume that people want this stuff, but instead require that they be asked. And certainly if people want, for many reasons, different types of plastics and materials, they're provided. But I think many of you have probably done this at the 7-Eleven. Nope, I don't need a bag. And it's an educational thing that really makes a huge difference. I think people ultimately like it. And it goes back to a video I made with my daughter 20 years ago that won an EPA national award. And, I think we need to look at programs like that are having a big impact across the state, and that this legislation is an avenue to do so. So we provide a lot more detail about that idea and how that could be dovetailed with some of the plastic bag requirements going forward. Thank you so much. I'm here to be involved and answer questions as they come up. It may make sense to go to Nicole's presentation and take questions at the end. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great presentation. I appreciate the committee's work on this, and also that shout out to South Lakewood Elementary School. That was really helpful in changing the way Jefferson County Public Schools handles these sorts of things. So I have that we could go to questions now. Certainly want to note that we have this report and your recommendations, so we can consider this assignment closed for you as we then take it over and look at how we want to move forward upon your recommendations, or if we have further questions that need to come back. Are there any questions at this point, or do you want to roll into item 5, which is another part of the conversation? Item 5, okay, so we'll roll into 5. Mr. Freeman, you'll still be here in case we need to come back. And with item 5, that I'll have the clerk read that in, please.
Item 5, presentation update on House Bill 21-1162, single-use plastic production from Lakewood staff.
Okay, and just real quick, I know if folks are wanting to engage, I'll do public input on both of these items since they are on the same topic. So remind me if I forget that, but we'll have public input after this presentation. Right, Mr. Robb?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just want to introduce Nicole Sturr. She's the revenue manager from the City Finance Department, kind of giving the other half of this presentation on this topic from the response side from the city. So with that, I think, Nicole, go ahead and introduce yourself and share your screen.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Sturr. I'm with the Finance Department as a revenue manager. And I thank you, Mr. Friedman, for your presentation. This is going to kind of supplement that presentation as it is for City Council information on the Lakewood's plan to implement House Bill 21-1162. And
great. Well, welcome while you're getting that set up. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you. So the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act presentation will first provide an overview of the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. From there, I'll discuss the bag fee remittance, the city's communication plan to the citizens and businesses, and at the end, there will be time for questions. So let's get started with the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. The act is a state mandate law that will be administered and enforced by the city. The purpose is to limit the use of single-use plastic carry-out bags and expanded polystyrene products to mitigate the harmful effects of our state's natural resources and our environment that results from disposing of these products in our landfills. The act has many phases. Starting January 1st, 2023, a store may provide a customer with recycled paper or single-use plastic carry-out bags at the point of sale if a customer pays a bag fee of 10 cents per bag. On January 1st, 2024, a store may no longer provide plastic carryout bags unless the plastic bags were in the store's remaining inventory on January 1st, 2024. But a recycled paper carryout bag can be provided at point of sale with a bag fee of 10 cents per recycled bag. Also, on January 1st, 2024, a retail food establishment shall not distribute styrofoam products for use as a container for ready-to-eat food. A retail food establishment may distribute any remaining inventory until the inventory is depleted. Lakewood City Council may add provisions that are more stringent than the Act on July 1st, 2024. And lastly, Lakewood City Council may raise the bag fee amount by ordinance or resolution. Carryout bag is a bag that is furnished to a customer at a store or retail food establishment at the point of sale for the use by the customer to carry purchased items. Carryout bag does not include a small lightweight paper bag like a paper lunch bag, a bag that a pharmacy provides to a customer purchasing prescription medication, a laundry, dry cleaning, or garment bag, a bag provided to a participant in a federal or state food assistance program, a bag that a customer uses inside a store. For example, at a grocery store, bags used to package loose or bulk items such as fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and candy, bags that contain unwrapped prepared foods or bakery goods, bags to contain or wrap frozen foods, meats, seafoods, fish, or other items that would dampen or contaminate other items. Stores which carry out bags are traditionally provided to customers will be affected. This includes grocery stores, supermarkets, convenience stores, liquor stores, drugstores, clothing stores, and temporary vendors such as farmers markets and vendors at festivals. Small stores are exempt from the law, and generally small stores include stores that are less than 3 locations in the state of Colorado. How will retail food establishments be affected by the law? Starting January 1st, 2024, retail food establishments including restaurants shall not distribute styrofoam products for use as a container for ready-to-eat food. Restaurants that prepare or serve food in individual portions for immediate consumption are not required to collect the 10-cent fee. The bag fee remittance. Stores will retain 40% of the fees collected, and stores will remit 60% of the fee to Lakewood on a quarterly basis, utilizing the same system that the sales tax is remitted. Remittance is required starting the second quarter of 2024, but we will have our software in place so they can start remitting starting first quarter 2023. So they don't have to hold on to the money and for a year until they can remit it. It's better for them to just remit it as soon as possible. Per the Act, the city can use bag fees in 2 ways. 1, to pay for the administrative and enforcement costs, such as software and personnel, and 2, recycling, composting, or other waste diversion programs and related outreach and education activities. In 2023, bag fees will be used for promotion and education, and the bag fee will be reviewed and applied to areas that will serve the community. Lakewood's communication plan includes consulting with other communities, particularly those that already have a bag fee in place, to learn more about the most effective strategies, asking businesses about what support they need, develop a phased communication plan to reach residents and businesses. The first phase will focus on bringing communication of the importance of bringing your own bag and providing educational support to businesses. Later phases will be based on the amount collected from fees. Potential strategies for outreach include kickoff events, website with link for residents and a link for businesses, series of bag giveaways events, including a business association meetings, city events, and recreation centers. City communication channels include social media, newsletters, and videos. An ordinance is being prepared to exempt the bag fee from Lakewood sales and use tax. First reading is January 9th. City Council shall decide if the city needs an ordinance for the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. Lakewood may enforce a violation against a store or retail food establishment in the manner that it chooses. Thank you, and I'll open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you very much. And I will mention that it looks like we've already started to notify the community. I've seen some correspondence from the Lakewood team to small businesses, so I appreciate that. On a high level, this seems like a tax auditing nightmare. How in the world do we audit something like it? Almost seems just like the honor system.
I think a lot of it's going to be on the honor system while we review records. When we're completing an audit for a business, we will also make sure that it makes sense on the amount that was remitted. So we will look at their inventory and kind of compare with some leeway for each business. There must be a percentage where people I know it's going to be difficult for when you check out yourself and you have to say how many bags you use, and not everybody's going to be honest. So there'll be some leeway.
Yeah. Sure. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Ms. Sharzai.
Yes, thank you. I understand that it would be a model or a projection and it's based on an honor system, but is there any sort of consideration on what that revenue may look like for the 60% share once this is fully up and running? And then my second question is, I know this is happening in Denver already, but were there other municipalities we could look at in neighboring areas that maybe I'm just not aware are already implementing this?
So yes, the first question, the second question was that we do have the city of Denver and Fort Collins and the city of Boulder currently have bag fees. We have reviewed the revenue that they're bringing in, but it's still very difficult to kind of figure out how much, because really the idea is for us to not get any fees, essentially, because we really just want people to bring their own bags. But from estimating, I think it will be at least a couple thousand annually.
Thank you.
Mayor Paul, if I could.
Mr. Freeman.
Thank you. On your second question, we did provide a detailed chart. There are a number of smaller municipalities that also in the proposal, not in the slideshow, the PowerPoint, that have had and continue to have plastic bag fees. The point I'd make is that many of the big box stores have already implemented and are implementing this. And it's going to be, the audit will not be easy, but because it's covering bigger locations, there may be some efficiencies across the state on certain of these matters. And that's really what CML, among other things, is leading the charge on to help localities try to gear up for this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Olver.
Yeah, I had a question. The stores are keeping 40%. Do we have an idea what they're going to use that for? Or, well, you could answer that, but also my immediate thought was it's going to be for profit for them to actually do this. Is that what it's about, or was there something else?
So I'm sorry, the second part was that there's going to be
No, actually, I'm just asking why. What are the stores going to use their 40% for?
I'm not sure exactly where the stores are going to use the 40%. I'd imagine just for the difference in cost from plastic to paper might be a piece of it. Maybe it is also for just their administration part of it also.
It's cited in the law that it would be used for their administration of their program and related activities. It's one of the websites we refer to as the Philadelphia program, because this has been rolled out big time across the country in certain cities, and they have all these different nuances covered that would reflect things that stores do and have to spend money on to try to make this work and make their customers not throw their hands in the air and get frustrated.
Okay. I was thinking 40%, whatever, 40% seems high, because all they're going to do is say, hey, you have to bring in your own bags, which most of us do right now anyway. And so, I think the administrative costs and everything else would be a lot less if they don't have to provide bags. So I'm just wondering, it just seemed high to me.
And the 40% of the 10 cent fee would go to them only if they did provide a plastic bag or a paper bag in 2023 or a paper bag in 2024.
Good point.
Hopefully that will go down.
Okay. Are there other questions? Mr. Abel, are you trying to raise your hand there? All right, Mr. Abel, then Ms. Vincent.
Sorry, keeps trying to mute me. How will people, since the pandemic started, grocery stores have been offering pickup and delivery of groceries so one does not have to go into the building. They generally bring those groceries out in plastic bags. How would that be handled after this takes effect? Will we pull up to the pickup point, hand them our bags, and then have them transfer the groceries into our multi-use bags? Or how will that happen? And has anyone talked to the grocery stores about the added expense of that? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand we all have microplastics in our bloodstream already. This is something that needs to be done, but how do we handle that transfer of groceries from pickup boxes, crates, to the vehicle?
Somebody want to talk? Do we have an answer to that, or do we know yet?
I saw Nicole starting to nod her head, but I certainly would defer to her.
This is definitely a piece that needs further work. I know that I think it was Fort Collins that has been trying to figure out different ways on how to make that happen. Currently, if there is a plastic bag that you use that you receive from pickup or delivery, there would be a 10 cent fee. But we're trying to find different alternatives to that situation. And yes, I agree that, collaborating with stores to try to find a way that works the best would be ideal.
And it's my understanding that soon the 10 cents a bag fee won't be a possibility. So,
right.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, Councilman Abel, the phase-in is a bit confusing, but it does, yes, it basically for the first year provides this 10 cent fee for plastic bags, and then that's no longer available for plastic. And then ultimately there's a ban on all single-use bags. It unfolds over time. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Ms. Vincent?
Thank you. Is this a time I know we combined 4 and 5 together. So is it okay to talk about something on the 4th presentation?
Yeah, you bet. Please.
Okay. One thing I would really like to pursue is perhaps a campaign. I don't know that we need an ordinance to totally stop it, but is skip or stop the stuff. I think there could be some good stuff that happens out of that. And I think an education campaign, perhaps with the local businesses, as well as people who do the carry out with the plastic forks. I know that I hear complaints all the time about people who pick up something, come home, and they have 10 ketchup packets, when they didn't even need them or anything. So I don't know if we could go ahead and pursue something like that. I would be in favor for that. So I don't know what anybody else thinks.
So I think what I would like to do is we start to plan for next year. This could be a topic that council could take up at the retreat and really start to, if there's an appetite to do a little bit or a lot of it or something in between, I think that could be a good opportunity.
Okay, so you're looking at all of this then to bring forward at a retreat. Is that my understanding?
Well, that would be, since we're a month away, that would probably be the next opportunity for us to set up, what we want to do next year and how we want to do it. So that's how I would see that going, but it's certainly up to council.
That works for me. Thanks.
Yep. Are there other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much again to our LAC and to Ms. Stair and your team for this presentation. Good food for thought for this body as we look to move forward with different things. And certainly we'll imagine we'll have many more discussions here in the future. So I hope you have a wonderful night. I know probably you'll be staying with us for the next 2 presentations, but appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I will open the public input portion. So this is your opportunity to weigh in on the presentations in numbers 4 and 5. If you press *9 to raise your hand, we'll get you to come on over to our side and give us some feedback for 3 minutes. Okay. I will close that portion. I don't see any hands up, and ask the clerk to please move into number 6.
Item 6, presentation, an annual update from the Lakewood Advisory Commission.
Fantastic. And will you introduce our presenter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce Kate McBride, who's the chair of the Lakewood Advisory Commission. And she's going to let you all know what the LAC has been up to for 2022 and some of last year as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Great. Ms. McBride, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. Thanks for taking this time for this important update.
Hi, good evening. Let me share my screen before I get started talking. How's that working?
There you go.
I see some thumbs up. Great. All righty. Excellent. Well, thank you, Mayor, City Council members, for having me here this evening. My name is Kate McBride, and I have the privilege of being the chair of the Lakewood Advisory Commission. And as was already stated, I'm here to share our annual update, which includes a little information from 2021 and all of 2022. And I know it's getting late, so I'll move through this quickly, but I'd be happy to address any questions as we move through or at the end.
Right. Take your time too. This is good stuff.
Great. And just a quick introduction. I know this will be old information for most, but for anybody listening in, the Advisory Commission for an Inclusive Community, or ACIC, was established in 2007. And in 2018, we changed the name to the Lakewood Advisory Commission, or LAC. And our mission statement is to support Lakewood as a vibrant and inclusive community. So the LAC shall be an advocate and informed voice for the community by providing research and recommendations on local issues for you, City Council. And over its 15 years, the LAC has completed over 80 assignments, which when I added that all up, I was really, really shocked. That's a lot of work. So here's our summary of the current commissioners. We have 21 commissioners currently, and all commissioners serve on at least one of 4 committees. So our 4 committees are civic awareness, diversity, neighborhoods, and sustainability. And then we have 3 officers, myself, as chair, a vice chair, and secretary. And the folks with the very small looking asterisks next to their names are the chairs of each of those 4 committees. And I should say, we also have an executive committee that consists of the officers and those chairs of the committees. So there's 7 of us. So continuing on the note of the commissioners, this has been a year of a lot of change. We began 2022 with, I switched slides, apologies. We started 2022 with 22 total commissioners. And throughout the year, we had 14 commissioners resign, which was a lot of change. But thanks to an incredible focus on recruitment and thanks to the screening committee doing a lot of screening and interviews, we were able to welcome 13 new commissioners in 2022, which has brought in so much excitement and energy. And we're just so looking forward to a new year. We'll get there on next couple slides, but really exciting new assignments. Looking forward to doing some really fun work with this great group. I wanted to take a moment to recognize, you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide, we've got 2 commissioners who have reached their term limit, meaning they have served 2 3-year terms. Bernard Barthel and Dave Ryan have both served 6 years, which is an amazing amount of time to volunteer with any organization. It's just fantastic. So just wanted to give them both a shout out. That's really great. They've taught us all a lot. And so just really big thank you. And also Andrea Galfuso-Getz, who has served a full 5 years, almost reached that full term limit, is leaving for a sabbatical, going overseas. So we'll be sad to see her go as well. But lots and lots of great work from these people. That's a huge amount of volunteer work. So on the note of change, that leaves us at 18 commissioners for the new year. But the good news is we know there are 4 potential commissioners in the pipeline, which gives us the opportunity to potentially start 2023 back at 22 commissioners. So that would put us where we began 2022. So, and lots of good energy. So on to the work. 2021, we've got a pretty packed slide here. You see all 4 committees represented. And probably some assignments that are pretty familiar to folks. First up, seeing REMP, or Renewable Energy Mitigation Program. I know that's been up in conversations this year, and something we use as a good example assignment when we speak to people about the LAC is the fishing line disposal, as it's something we've worked on, and now there are signs in Lakewood parks. So that's a fun example of work that the LAC has done and how it appears in the community. Also, in 2021, we did the research that led to diversity being the 4th permanent subcommittee of the LAC. And those are just a few examples, not to minimize the other assignments here in 2021. In 2022, we have a lot of work in progress. We have what Roger Freeman just presented on behalf of the Sustainability Committee, the plastic bags research. We have 2 proposals that are near final drafts, so we look forward to being back here very, very soon to present those. Those are neighborhood links, which is sidewalks, probably the more familiar term used to describe that, and turf replacement / water conservation, and then 2 newer assignments that are just getting underway, the safer streets and women / minority owned businesses. So that's what is keeping everybody busy and has kind of injected some new excitement with our newer LAC members. Other things we've worked on this year. We're pleased to report that we finished after a lot of work and much support from city staff. We finished our very first LAC Policies and Procedures Manual. It was a big undertaking, but hopefully it will help us onboard new commissioners moving forward and give us a nice cornerstone. We have also developed an LAC flyer or brochure. It's a trifold piece that can be shared electronically or printed and then recycled when we're out in the community discussing the LAC with residents who might be interested in what we do. The photo here on the slide is 3 of us at the Lakewood Earth Day event where we got to interact with other residents and just kind of chat and actually met some future commissioners there. Other items that the commission is involved in, we are involved in an ambassador program, and that is where LAC members volunteer to attend or watch or listen to meetings and report on topics that are relevant to the city of Lakewood. So listed here on the slide are 4 of the meetings that we regularly attend and report on. These are certainly up for discussion should council's interests change at any point in time. So if you have new interests or anything, any feedback on your the reports that you receive, please do let us know. And then just as we're nearing the end here, other items that the LAC members have been involved in are serving on review committees. So we've been involved in grant review committee work and Inspiration Award nomination reviewers and other grant and award nomination committees. And then finally, just for any listeners and really anybody, I've said residents here, but anybody, these are open meetings. We welcome anybody to please join us, listen in. We welcome people to participate. It's a fun way to learn about what's going on in the community, fun way to connect with some really interesting people and learn about what's going on, potentially make a difference. It's something that I personally have really enjoyed. I think that the other commissioners, this is something we do for fun and to give back. So we encourage folks to join us, come call in to a meeting. And on behalf of the commission, we'd just like to thank the city council for the opportunity to make a positive impact on the community. And we'd also really like to extend our thanks to city staff, Rosa, Tate, and J. Rob for all of their guidance and support this year. They help us so much. And that's it for our presentation, but please let us know if there's any questions I can answer.
Well, fantastic. Thank you. And certainly thank you to our outgoing members, Mr. Barthel and Ryan and Ms. Goetz, who's heading out to do some really fun stuff. So we're excited for her. So I would also echo the ambassador updates are really great. They're very informative and helpful to see what's going on in other governments. So thank you for that. And we want to always make sure that one, you're busy enough, and I think council's trying to figure out how best, we get you assignments and allow you to bring those forth as well. So any kind of input there. And as we move forward, I think, again, into the retreat, that's where we always look at opportunities for the LAC, but also throughout the year when council members have things to bring forward, but also things that you might find of interest in your groups. And I would just close with that. You've seen a lot of change, not just through COVID, but certainly through our different staffing and the different folks. So I think we got a good group. We're gearing up to get you a full boat of members and look forward to working with you in the future. And with that, I'll gladly open it up to questions, comments from council. Do you want to maybe, there we go. Okay, Mr. Olver.
Hey, Kate. Hey, thanks for coming out and doing all that tonight. We really do appreciate it. One of the things I noticed was you had like a 50% turnover this past year. Do you have any idea why? I mean, that does seem high. Are people being disillusioned, or they just have other things to do? Or do you got any idea is there anything we can do to help you slow down that kind of a turnover? Would be the right question.
That is a wonderful question, and one area I don't have a great sense. I think I could probably speculate, but that probably isn't useful for this setting. But one area of focus the executive committee is working on is we will be doing exit interviews or exit surveys moving forward to make sure we really capture that and adjust where needed if we're finding common themes. So, and we can certainly share that feedback once we captured that, if we're getting the sense that there is something common going on.
All right. Okay, thanks.
And certainly I should add, our Vice Chair, Kip Kochmeyer, is here for the next presentation, and he may have more to add there.
Great. If we want to bring him over, we can certainly do that. I have Ms. Strom and Ms. Franks.
I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of you that are spending all this time doing it. I think, it's not all of us are good at doing the research, and the skill that you have and the passion that you have is really very valuable to helping us be able to come up with the great ideas that we're trying to put into place. So thank you. My question is just, I'm really curious to know what the Women-Owned Business Project is underway.
I'm so sorry. I think my internet cut out right as you got to the question. So I heard women and the minority-owned business project, and that was it. Apologies.
Yeah, Ms. Strom, you kind of cut out at the end there.
I'm curious what the Women-Owned Business Project is. Did that come out better?
Yes, this was an assignment we just received from council, and it
looks like Ms. Sherazai, I think she brought that forth, and I don't know, Ms. McBride, maybe she can add more context if you'd like.
That would be wonderful. I was just thinking, quick grab the text and pull that up to not misstate it. But if somebody else would like to articulate
sure.
I'd be happy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ms. McBride. This was a great presentation. I had requested some research and a possible opportunity for us to take a closer look at the procurement process for the city of Lakewood as it relates to women and minority-owned business. I know that we recently reviewed a contract, and that sort of raised a flag that that's not a process that we have in place in other big cities. I supported an effort in Denver on this, and so hoping that Lakewood can come up with something as well.
There we go. Fantastic.
Thank you.
And Mr. Kolkmeyer, welcome. Nice to have you. We'll go to Ms. Franks and then Mr. Olver, unless you want to jump in on that question also.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I did want to, first thank Kate McBride for, I just love your energy. I love your passion. I love the presentation. So thank you so much. It is one of our privileges to be able to interview potential volunteers. It's quite inspiring, and certainly wanted to thank you for all the efforts for you and all of the commission members. To answer a little bit of Councilor Olver, we do get quite a bit of input from the people who are reapplying, sort of giving us sort of insights into the things that we as a council could do better. And just, obviously for this discussion, really, it's making sure that the goals of the research are really understood. What are we trying to get? Do we just want to know what others are doing? Are we trying to be innovative? Are we looking for policy direction? Just being very clear on what we're looking for when we provide those assignments. Other things that have been shared with us where folks maybe have been a little frustrated is that there's sometimes a lag between the presentation and the recommendations and council taking some action. And if we decide not to move something forward, maybe just not being real clear and concise about getting back to folks and giving feedback on, well, why did it move forward or what might we expect next time? So I think there's some opportunities for improvement there. And then we as a screening committee have opportunities for improving the experience of just the interview process and those types of things. So I think there's definitely opportunities for improvement, but I think that what excites me the most is just seeing the highly skilled, highly talented folks coming before us who have very busy lives and who want to contribute to the city. That's what's most inspiring for me. So I just wanted to have those comments as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Olver, then Ms. Sherzai.
Oh, sorry, lost my cursor for a second there. Kate, we talked, and I'm going to just follow up, kind of say the same thing I said to you before. But there's been a number of topics, issues that different counselors have forwarded to the LAC. And I asked you if anybody came in and came to your meetings and explained what they wanted. And actually your answer was no at the time. But that's what I understood anyway. I was wondering if you think it would be better for counselors when they submit something to the LAC to come to one of your meetings and explain it, or are you guys just happy with the paperwork that goes from the counselors to the staff to LAC? But how can we make that better?
And I will also encourage Kip to chime in, or excuse me, Mr. Kolkmeyer to chime in. I think there's no replacement. Certainly having documentation is always good, but there's no replacement for just good old fashioned conversation. So I think both is certainly welcome. We should have a great assignment written out and have that documented, but I think there's always an opportunity to refine and ask questions and make sure we're moving in the right direction. I can't think of anything worse than spending months of your life, possibly a year of your life, working on research that isn't what the group is looking for. That none of us want that. That would be a horrible thing to do. So making sure we're all moving in the right direction, and but that's what the LAC members want. That's, I think, what council would want. And if that can be resolved through a quick conversation, whether LAC comes to this type of meeting or vice versa, however that could play out, we're open to that discussion. But certainly, I think that answered your question.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sherzai.
Yes, thank you. This is a great overview of what's happened in the last year, of what's happened in 2021, but I'd love to hear from you, Ms. McBride, and maybe you, Mr. Kolkmeyer, what are you excited about as we look forward to the new year with the LAC? What are some of the things that are of interest that we can consider here in council too?
That's a great question. I think probably first and foremost is having excited folks in place, having assignments. We're going to come to our first meetings in January, and we have assignments ready to go and people ready to move on them. So I think just the structure is what I'm most excited about from my perspective. Mr. Kochmeyer, please feel free.
Thanks. I would echo that. I think we have a large number of new and excited people that have a lot of ideas. And the difficulty and challenge for us is going to be to mold those ideas in a...
I can hear you. It's her talking.
So I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. So it's molding those in a way that we utilize our people most effectively and deliver the results that you want. But I think you're going to see a number of grassroots initiatives coming up as suggestions for council. We've heard from a number of the new members. And to Councilor Olver's point, 2 of the 4 recommendations we'd like to make to you tonight have to do with the very issue of clarifying what it is council wants from us, because we are here to serve you.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions on this presentation? Certainly, I'll go over to public input. Anybody wish to speak? And I will acknowledge it looks like we have a great turnout from the members of the LAC. So thanks for taking your Monday night in late December to come hang out with us. Appreciate that. Okay, well, I will now close that portion and ask the clerk to read item 7.
Item 7, presentation, discussion on policies and procedures of the Lakewood Advisory Commission.
We're just going to roll that right on over to.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks. And so much appreciation, Mayor, to you and the entire council and to our city clerk and his staff for all that you do. And it's another late night for you, so I will be quick. We appreciate this study session because we do have some suggestions of how you could maybe make changes that would improve our ability to work on your behalf. And that's what we've tried to outline in the document that was attached to this presentation. The number one issue you've heard about is turnover. We have almost an entirely new commission, and there are the first 2 suggestions we would ask you to consider really go to that issue. And the first one's a structural change. We are suggesting that you consider decreasing the number of overall commissioners. It's a large commission now, 30 commissioners. We are having tremendous difficulty getting there, which means that we spend a lot of time just trying to find new people. And you have to spend a lot of time doing the interviews. So we think 25 works. And the reason it does is we have 4 committees. That would put 5 people as a minimum on each committee, plus 3 officers. And then we'd still have a couple more members that could supplement a committee that may be busier. Sustainability tends to be our busiest committee, so maybe those 2 commissioners would be there. So that would be a structural change that you would need to do by ordinance. Secondly, we'd ask you to think about streamlining the process for reappointment. Ultimately, you're the council, you make the appointments. If you decide someone should not be reappointed or someone should be appointed in their place, that's always going to be and should be your determination. But if someone has served and they are in good standing, they haven't violated the policies and procedures, it might not be necessary for you to have them go through a full application and a full interview process. That takes quite a few months sometimes. And often interviews are delayed because they're trying to make sure they take advantage of your time and don't have you do interviews on one person and then another person. So they wait till you have a number of applicants before you do the interview. So that might be something that would improve that process as well. The third suggestion we'd ask you to consider is really on something that's already been discussed. Since we exist to assist you, it's so important that we need to know exactly what you want us to research. And we're suggesting that you more formalize that process. Right now, there's kind of a mixture. We've gotten proposals a lot of different ways. It may be that a form is filled out. It may be that there was a discussion at City Council. And sometimes it's not quite clear what exactly it is you want us to do. And therefore, our suggestion would be you fill out the form, but then council takes some action. And if you were to take a formal action and send it to us, then there would be certainty as to the project scope. Similarly, once it's finished, we would have you just recognize that the project is done. However you all determine you want to deal with the recommendations is, of course, your prerogative. But really, at the point that LAC delivers a project to you, we think it'd be helpful to make it clear that that's done. Quite often what happens is, like it did tonight, a project gets explained and delivered, and then the question is, well, maybe we ought to do this, or maybe we ought to do that. And that's fine, but if you want LAC to do something additional, then that should be clear as well. And then our last recommendation is on this issue of communication, because we do think that's important. And we would love to have any member of council, as if you don't already have enough meetings to go to, if you wanted to attend a meeting of a committee that was working on a project you had sent down, that would be tremendously helpful. And I think that discussion could be something that would give you an even better product. So as Kate mentioned, whether it's us coming before you, maybe quarterly, or submitting written reports to you on the status of projects, or you all communicating with us, all of those things we think are quite valuable. And then I won't go over the second part of the memo. Basically, that's just to let you know things that we are already doing that we hope will improve the process and make it possible for us to deliver better products to you. And the last thing I will say is, I think you all can see why Kate is our chair. She is wonderful, and I just appreciate all of her work. So we're happy to take any questions you have and react to any other suggestions or thoughts you have. But those are things that we would ask you to consider going forward.
Very nice. Nicely done. And check. I certainly support all of those. I'll say one thing that what we have tried to do in the past, and I think it goes to your number 4, and it was mentioned tonight, but potentially with the more clarification, the more formalization from council, I think the idea going back to the early days was really to give you the independence, right? To not have a mayor or a council member at your meetings potentially influencing you or the path. This was really your opportunity to share your expertise, which is much different than ours, and to bring that forward. So I think potentially with a more formalized way of handling these communications that could get you to a better place, I personally would be a little bit hesitant because, when we do direct, we speak as a body. And again, your independence is critically important. Ms. Franks?
Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to echo that. We provide direction as a body, and so that's why I've not attended the meetings. But I love the fact that if we had some touch points or if there was a clarification that was needed, I think we need to get those opportunities to have the conversation. And so I love formalizing a form. That way we can say, well, what's the end goal? What are we trying to achieve? And so I think we can definitely make strides there. But I definitely want to give you direction as a body. If you guys are needing that direction, I would prefer to do that kind of where you're coming to us rather than we're coming to you. So thank you.
You, Ms. Sharazai.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the time to put this together, and I would echo my colleagues. I am supportive of all of these changes. I feel like the LAC vacancy number never changed this year, and we were in endless interviews for that. So I'm glad to see some movement at looking at what is an appropriate size for this body, because I don't think you've ever reached 30 since ever. So I think that, in an effort to sort to get to work and move past constant recruitment, I fully support all that. And so I'm just echo that. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. I guess a follow-up would either be to Mr. Robb or Mr. Goldstein. Then I guess all these would be encompassed or encapsulated in a ordinance to come back. Okay. Cool. I'm not seeing any no's to that portion. So with that, we'll go to public input, and looks like Mr. Comden, your hand is up. We want to bring you over here, and let me get my timer ready to go for you. Let's see. Are you over here? Did you drop?
There he goes.
All right, Mr. Comden, go ahead. You know the drill, and 30 seconds, you'll hear a ding, and then you'll hear it again. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Very happy that this conversation is happening. I've since I moved here a couple of years ago, I've been really interested in the LAC, and I remember, I forget when it was, but maybe a year or two ago, I guess council had been behind in scheduling the presentations from them. So then they did like one night of just like a ton of presentations all at once. And I thought that was really nice. And then, but then I go listen to the LAC meeting like the next week. And I think there must have been some miscommunication because some of the people felt a little, I guess, depressed that there wasn't that many questions, or it just didn't seem like council was interested. And that was kind of my impression from that. And I've just attended some of the LAC meetings on and off, and thought they're doing hard work and trying to move things forward. And I don't know if there's a way for them. And I think this was brought up in a lot of the proposals put forward tonight, is to have some better communication between the LAC and the council to make sure that things are clear. One thing as an outsider that I would be interested in that isn't here, but maybe, I don't know if it would make any sense to have any space on like Lakewood Together for the LAC, so that they could like showcase their projects and what they're working on, or if they're looking for like outside input, things like that. Cause there's already, a structure there for like redevelopment of parks and everything. I think that might be a nice way to get extra public input that are not necessarily in the LAC, but may be interested in specific topics for a short amount of time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, I'll close that. And I think that's actually a great suggestion. Mr. Goldstein, do you think from time to time, have we had that opportunity for the LAC, or is it on their own page?
We have. It's project specific, so it's not necessarily just blanket. LAC has a spot on Lakewood Together. It's tied to a project normally, which is kind of how Lakewood Together works. Yeah. The project page. So
cool. All right. Well, I would just close with this. What you do is very important. You do it because you love the city. And so it's very important that you're honored by this body and the work that you do. And so again, for a couple of years, it has been challenging, and then certainly through COVID, and we weren't able to have these opportunities very often. So I look forward to a little bit of a revamp, and want to thank you all and move into 2023, and look forward to working together and seeing what comes forward. So thank you. All right, council, any committee updates or ward announcements, or certainly it's the end of the year for holidays. So if anybody wants to weigh in there, Ms. Sherzai.
Yeah, I can give an update. On December 7th, Dr. Cog, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, had their board work session, and we're starting to discuss the role that Dr. Cog could play in housing in the region. And so really what they're centering that conversation on is their ability to provide data, regional planning, and convening. There was some discussion around with board members on, do we need another ad hoc committee to support this effort? Are municipalities doing it on their own? And so there was some back and forth about that. We'll have more discussion on that coming in the new year, but that is a conversation that we started at the April retreat. I'm so excited to see where we go from here.
Right, thank you. Any other committee updates or ward announcements or holiday wishes? Ms. Jansen.
So Councillor Strom and I decided to cancel our January ward meeting and continue it on to February will be our next one for the next year. So that's what we're going to be doing in Ward 5. Thanks. Have a Merry Christmas.
All right, anybody else? Seeing none, I would just remind council, like to get the committee set. Mr. Olver, I have not heard back from you. So if you'd let me know what committees you would like to be on, I'll do my best to accommodate, and that'll be on the calendar and agenda on January 6th, I think. I don't have my 2023 here with me, but this will be our last meeting of the year. So certainly wish you all a wonderful holiday season. I celebrate Christmas. Wish you Merry Christmas, certainly Happy Hanukkah, and all the wonderful holidays for our many different folks in the city of Lakewood. I also wish you a very happy new year, a very blessed new year as we look forward to hope and peace in 2023. So thank you all very much. We will adjourn this meeting at 9:07 p.m. Thank you.